Hey, I saw your comment and I wanted to just address it, and it's easier to do it in video than it is to type for me because I'm dyslexic and stuff like that. You are very correct. Renaissance fairs have amazing people, and I worked and ran Renaissance fairs for over a decade. And I met my husband at a Renaissance fair and I love them. They're great. However, there are some inherent racism problems with Renaissance fair just in general. Besides the one that I worked. I know you said you worked down south. I definitely worked up further than you. And what I would say is, the first thing is just the people's understanding of history in general. When a lot of people go and they participate in a Renaissance fair, they don't think of black or brown people at Renaissance fairs or participating in Renaissance fairs or being nobles or anything other than a serf or a slave or a native from the Americas. And that's because, and it's no fault of the Renaissance fairs themselves, it's a fault of history and people just not seeing enough of us in Renaissance portraits and Renaissance history and hearing all those things. Now, when it comes to Renaissance fair as a business, there are a lot of things inside the business that just makes it, again, inherently racism. A lot of the Renaissance fairs work on an idea of having guilds and things like that. Guilds are nonprofits. Nonprofits can be, they pick the nonprofits they want. It's a very insulated process, which inherently allows for subtle, non-subtle, and just people not realizing they're being racist. For example, I worked a very famous Dickensian show in San Francisco, and one of the first things that I was told, I played a character, Fagin, from Oliver, and one of the first things that I was told by a 5-year-old was, my father says you're too dark to be Fagin. Or I would get comments like, Fagin's on a holiday. Oh, it looks like Fagin went down to Mexico, or things like that on a constant basis, which was extremely mentally challenging. But also from the aspect of being someone who has cast inside a Renaissance fair as a casting director, I tended to cast very diverse as much as I possibly could. However, there are a lot of people who hold on to the ideology that brown people can only play the villains because they represent Spain. And first of all, Spanish people are darn near whiter than I am, and whiter than a lot of Americans. So I don't really see that being true or honest. However, me, myself, I had always been cast as the villain. And for over the 13, 14 years that I worked and the 10 years that I was running, the only people who were put in villain roles were Latin or black people, period, across the board. And that didn't change until I really vocalized that issue. Now, another thing that when you look at is the idea of costuming and what is appropriate. Now, a lot of Renaissance fairs, they can be wonderful and they're not as stringent on costuming. I happen to have worked at a fair that a lot of people consider a costume Nazi fair. Beautiful costumes, very strict on everything. That includes hair, and that includes what would be comfortable for a lot of people of color to wear. So overall, yes, the people aren't necessarily racist. The setup is racist. And from my experience where I worked, there is a lot of, we are liberal, but have a lot of inherent bias and a lot of white privilege and a lot of micro-racism that just was never looked at. And it's maybe none of their fault, and I've forgiven a lot of it now, but it's sad. However, like I said, I met my husband at Renaissance Fair, and it's a great place for a lot of people. But I just thought I would address the comment this way. And go to Renaissance Fair, support them. I still go. I go to the one in Las Vegas. I love it. However, there are things that are problematic, and I just like to call those out. However, Civil War reenactments now, I just don't know Yeah. There really is no out of that one. That's just pretty, like, playing on racism.